Hey guys, it's Sunday morning, June 11th, 2023, and I just wanted to come and share another video with you guys. I know I need to get back to taking you on my rucks with me and things like that. It's just been very difficult between trying to get all of our house preparation done and my working 40 hours a week still, and all the things that I have to balance being a father and a husband. And I really have enjoyed this format. So I just wanted to be able to come back and share something else with you that was heavy on my mind. And I'm going to proceed that way because this is where I feel like I'm being led to share this information. And the funny thing is that this is actually something that my wife shared with me. She's out of town this morning. She's visiting her father for Father's Day. She is there a week early, and that's nice, so she can be with me for Father's Day, so I'm always thankful for that. But she's visiting with her dad today, and she sent me this video to watch, and I thought we could watch it together. So this is Jordan Peterson talking to Dr. Peter Attia, how the food pyramid shaped the obesity epidemic.
So let me step sideways here for a moment. I'd like to talk about the food pyramid with you. And so I'm going to lay a little bit out about my understanding of the food pyramid and how it came about. And then we could talk about the standard Western diet and its relationship to insulin resistance and obesity. So my understanding is that the food pyramid was actually produced not by scientists or by MDs, although there were some MDs who were consulting, who were mostly ignored, but by the Department of Agriculture. And it was a marketing scheme, essentially. And that the consequence of the marketing scheme was that people were enticed and convinced to rely primarily on carbohydrates for their nutritional necessities, and perhaps carbohydrates at far too excess a level. Now, carbohydrates are transmuted into glucose during metabolism, and we eat way more carbohydrates than we need to produce the amount of glucose that we need. Now, people have been getting fatter in a catastrophic way for about 4 or 5 decades, and that's really in no small part since the introduction of the food pyramid. Now, I do understand that part of the reason the Department of Agriculture did this was because carbohydrates, and this was particularly true of corn syrup, do provide a very inexpensive source of calories. And if you're dirt poor and you don't have enough to eat, I mean, just getting enough calories, period, is of vital importance. Not everybody can afford steak, for example, or more expensive foods of that type, but virtually everyone, poor or not, in the West can afford basic carbohydrates. But now we're in this situation. But having said that, I also have read, and I think it's valid, that there was early evidence that this heavy carbohydrate-loaded diet that was being prescribed was going to increase obesity and diabetes, which it's done at a level that makes the pandemic epidemic look like absolutely nothing. And this is still being pushed forward by people who are hypothetically on the nutritional front. So 2 questions. What's your understanding of the derivation of the food pyramid, and what do you think about its recommendations for the typical diet?
Before we get to Dr. Attia's answer, I think Jordan's really pulling some punches here. But he's always, he really does try to give a fair look at what happened. And what's the best way to put this? He tries to assume that people aren't always having nefarious intentions when it comes to what's going on. And I don't believe that most doctors and researchers have nefarious intentions when they start doing these things. They just believe certain things, like, say, for instance, Ansel Keys and the situation with vegetable oil being healthier for you. I think he accepted that as a truth in his own heart. And that, along with the fact that it was financing his research, pushed him in the direction that didn't push him in the direction, but it allowed him to push us in a direction that has taken us to where we are. I do understand he was a rather forceful individual as far as trying to make sure that whatever his agenda was what we were going to talk about, and this is how we're going to move forward. And a lot of times, anything that contradicted what he wanted it to say could be left out. So I'm not giving him a pass on that, but I will say that I think he was doing what he believed was going to be the best for people, or at least he convinced himself that he was doing what he thought was going to be the best for people. I think a lot of times we all do that. We have a tendency to self-justify, to self-deny, to deny the truth to ourselves about certain things because we want certain things to be true. And good Lord, how often is that true in a lot of areas of our lives? And then we look back and say, oh gosh, all the decisions I made based on that, just wrong. So I get where Jordan is trying to be less conspiratorial about what happened here, but I will say that there are certain people in positions of power today that are taking advantage of what the food we have been convinced is okay for us to eat and using that to make us weaker and dumber and more docile and easier to control. So just my opinion, based on what I've been able to see, I think he sees it as well, but he always tries to come at it from an unbiased approach. That's my opinion of how he's approaching this right now. Let's see what Dr. Atiyah has to say to these questions. Let's back it up just a little bit so we can listen to those questions one more time.
People who are hypothetically on the nutritional front. So 2 questions. What's your understanding of the derivation of the food pyramid, and what do you think about its recommendations for the typical diet?
So I think before getting to that, there's a broader point I want to touch on that you just sort of alluded to, which is what is the system optimizing for? So in the book, I talk about the standard American diet, which I forever abbreviate as the SAD. And the standard American diet is effectively, with or without food pyramid, the standard American diet is what is killing people. And so the question is, where did the standard American diet come from? The standard American diet was nothing more than the solution to a business problem. So the business problem was, we need something where we can produce lots of food. So you had to have this quantity issue, right? So that gets to part of the problem, right? We have too many people at the time who are undernourished. We can't have that anymore. Everyone needs to be adequately nourished. So we need scale. The next thing is exactly your point. It can't cost too much. So we have to be able to do it at scale, and it has to be cheap. The third question or problem statement was, it has to be non-perishable and portable, right? So you can't have abundant food if it needs to be consumed 10 minutes after it's made. So it has to be sort of non-perishable. The fourth and final parameter, I guess, there would be it has to taste really good. We have to make food very palatable. This, again, is just part of a business and marketing strategy. And what I argue, I guess, is that the solution to those 4 things is what we have today. Like when you walk through a grocery store.
Exactly right. As far as everything he said is exactly right. And the one thing I want to point about that second answer to the question is that, or that proposition, is that it has to be cheap. The one thing I have noticed in my lifetime is everything has gotten cheaper built, cheaper made with less invested in it. And most things are disposable in a way. Like all the things we buy furniture now that has compressed cardboard for wood. And these things don't hold up over time. I see people in videos I watch. Sometimes I like to watch these nutty things on YouTube where people have fails or whatever. And I see a lot of times people trying to stand on tables or to do things on furniture that furniture today just can't do because it's made like disposable. It's like tissue paper. It's garbage. And things don't hold up. Well, we're doing that with our food now too. the things that we use to feed our body, we're choosing to find the least expensive option possible to feed ourselves so that we can spend all of our other money on things that are entertaining us for the most part. I have found personally that if I put my investment in the food that I eat, the rest of my life is much better, and I don't need to even seek as much entertainment as I used to want to seek. I would rather enjoy living now because I'm eating food that is not the cheap stuff. I'm eating meat. I'm eating mostly steak. And it powers my body with what I need, and what ultimately I wanted was to be able to live the life I wanted to live, to be able to be healthy and happy and strong. I wouldn't trade that for anything now. I don't spend nearly as much on entertainment as I used to in the past because I was trying to get out of a depressive hole, because I invest more money in my meat and more money in my food, making sure that I have healthy something to put in my body and for my family as well, as much as I can possibly get them to eat the right foods. And that has made a world of difference. And it's even made it to where I don't buy things like I used to. I don't buy things to fill some hole in my life that's not there anymore because I feel so much better. So anyway, I just wanted to say that about cheap being the key aspect he talked about.
All you're looking at is the solution space to a problem statement called those 4 questions, and it's called the standard American diet. Now, with or without a pyramid, I'm going to just argue that 95% of people, if they go through life eating the standard American diet with no attention to how much of it they eat or maybe certain things in it that they shouldn't eat, are going to be unhealthy. There just aren't that many people that have the genes to avoid the deleterious consequences of the standard American diet left unchecked. And therefore,
right,
yeah.
Well, so that was the least conspiratorial account of the origin of the American.
Well, I mean, there
that I've heard, and that's fine. I mean, that's perfectly appropriate. I mean, I do think that we could give the devil his due and say the consequences that we have today of this epidemic of obesity was, in fact, the consequence of solving a problem too effectively. I mean, the middle of supermarkets, the outside edges of supermarkets don't contain generally highly processed carbohydrates, let's say, but the center does. And they are cheap, and they are delicious, and they are easily provided, and they are portable, and they aren't. And so that did solve the problem of undernutrition on the pure caloric front. So we're victims of our own success in that sense. And I suppose it's perfectly reasonable to dispense with the accusations that the food pyramid was nothing but a marketing scheme, because it did have to solve these 4 problems that you described, and did so.
Yeah, I mean, I think what I certainly don't want to give the food industry a pass. I mean, we can certainly delve into that, which is to say, there's no question that data have been suppressed, right? There's no question that we're.
And that's the key when it comes back to any of the conspiratorial aspects of all this. And I put a conspiratorial in quotes because it's not necessarily that everybody got together that was involved behind the scenes to do this, but individually, people make decisions, especially researchers make decisions that are going to impact their ability to do research. And most of the funding was coming from the companies that make the things that they wanted to sell. So there is a conflict of interest. There's no doubt there was a conflict of interest. And because the studies, like say, for instance, the studies that Ancel Keys did, where he was looking at the food that was eaten by people in Finland or in Greece or the United States or Japan, there was plenty of comparison style research going on to where you can make the numbers say what you want them to say. And when you have a forceful personality like Ancel Keys had, you're going to get the result you want. And I believe that's what led us down the wrong path. And a lot of people look to him for that information. They look to him for the answers. And that became like he was, I don't know if he was the founder, but he had a lot to do with the beginning of the American Heart Association. And when you hear terms like American Heart Association, you think, oh, well, if the American Heart Association said this is good for me, then it's good for me. So you see where I'm going. At least I hope you do. I don't know. Anyway, let's continue on. Let me back up just a little bit so we don't miss what he was trying to say.
They don't want to give the food industry a pass. I mean, we can certainly delve into that, which is to say there's no question that data have been suppressed, right? There's no question that we're not having an honest discussion about the following. So are all calories created equal from an energy balance standpoint? Sure. At an isocaloric level, if I give you 1,000 calories of Coca-Cola versus 1,000 calories of baked potatoes versus 1,000 calories of steak, it will have the same impact on your energy balance. But it won't have the same impact on your appetite and your ability to subsequently eat. I mean, to me, that's the most, I think, probably offensive aspect of where the food industry has failed, right? So the food industry didn't set out to kill people any more than the tobacco industry did. Where these people are effectively liable is in that they're not honest about the discussion until, it becomes too late. And
that's what I was trying to say a moment ago. They're not honest about the discussion itself, not because they wanted to hurt people, but because they had other interests that were winning.
The reality of it is junk food, I think, hijacks your normal appetite centers. And I know people who are very good at working within those confines. So I know people who can eat junk food in small amounts and continue to eat nutritious food and stay in overall energy balance. They can track their calories perfectly, and they can have a couple of Oreos and some ice cream here and there and drink a soda here and there, and they're all fine. What I can just tell you clinically, taking care of actual people who are not robots, on average, more people than not struggle with that. And
I'm definitely in that latter category where I always have struggled with that. My best friend when I was growing up, he was always skinny as a rail. He'd eat pizza and Cheetos and macaroni and cheese and all kind of high carbohydrate garbage all the time. That caught up with him now that we're both in our 50s. But it used to frustrate me to no end. I couldn't understand how he could have these six-pack abs and all of his muscles were well-defined, and he ate pure garbage all the time. And here I am trying to stuff down salads and eating fruit and all these other things that I thought were healthy for me because I was listening to the low-fat nonsense. And no matter what I did, I put on the pounds like crazy. So I definitely can relate to that.
On average, more people than not struggle with that. And with the introduction of these very hyper-palatable foods that kind of hijack your appetite, it tends to produce overeating. And ultimately, that's the problem at hand here. When people overeat, from whichever part of the pyramid they're going to overeat from, we're going to get down that whole cascade we just spoke about. It just so happens that I think the things at the bottom of the pyramid are the things that are making it easier for you to be disconnected from the true driver of appetite. And there are lots of hypotheses here, right? There are some hypotheses that we are kind of hardwired to get a certain amount of nutrient value. And as the nutrient value of our food deteriorates, we have to eat more food. We have to eat more calories to get the certain nutrient density. There are people who argue we're hardwired to get a certain amount of protein. And as we're diluting protein,
you can see that just by looking at any buffet you ever go to, because there's no way I could sit down and eat 3 or 4 plates of food these days. But there was a time I could easily put away 3 or 4 plates of food. Now, this was long before I started Lion Diet. I had gotten down to where I wasn't eating large quantities of food, but I was still eating so often that I was eating the same amount of calories as if I had gone to a buffet and scarfed down several plates of food. So I guess it does add up over time. But the point being is that that's what we wind up doing when we eat that kind of food, is we need so much of it for our body to get what it needs. And at the same time, we're getting our dopamine kicks from all the sugar and the glucose and all the sweet flavor and everything else that just drives our brain chemicals crazy, that we eat way too much and we get addicted to it.
Content in food, we're eating more calories to get food. In other words, and by the way, I don't think any one of these particularly is necessarily the explanation. My guess is it could be a lot of the above, but it's probably the case that we are opportunistic omnivores, right? We grew up, we evolved eating pretty much anything we could, but we didn't eat that much of it because we didn't really have that much of it, and we were wildly active. When you eliminate those two consequences, being opportunistic omnivores is not working for most of us. We have to be more selective to push back against the amazing success of our civilization.
Oh, wow, that's it. Okay. Well, I definitely didn't do well as an opportunistic omnivore. I do much better as a carnivore. And it has changed my life. It's changed many lives. And we're all feeling stronger, healthier, happier. My skin is better. My clothes fit better. Everything is better since I stopped being an opportunistic omnivore and started being a carnivore. And I'm never going back myself. So that was a good video. I want to watch some more of what this video. Apparently, he did a lot of talking to Dr. Attia because we're seeing the Jordan Peterson clips here. And I'd like to see some more from this. And I'd like to hear what you think. Would you like to see more of me reviewing some of these type of things? So anyway, guys, if I can just have a couple more minutes of your time right after the end of this video, I want to share something with you that's very near and dear to my heart. And meanwhile, I am going to continue my carnivore diet with a delicious ribeye steak before I got to go to work today. I'll see you guys next time. Hey guys, this is just a quick little thing I wanted to share with you about something that I personally support and that I really enjoy watching, which is the Chosen TV series. It's a series about Jesus and the apostles that was created by Dallas Jenkins, and it is such a good series to me because it really brings the apostles to life. It brings the story of Jesus and the apostles to life in such a way that it's really affecting a lot of lives, and it's opening a lot of people's eyes to the truth about the gospel. Yes, it does take some creative license, but I got to tell you, it has caused me to search the scriptures to understand better what the story was based on the scriptures, simply because it's so compelling. And I think it's a great way to introduce people to the gospel, as well as to get believers more interested in knowing what the story was. It is really well done. It's so well done that I'm willing to put my name to it and try to put some support behind it. I've been trying to raise $1,000 for their season 4 production. So far we've had a few donations, but I haven't really made a big project about this on my channel, and I just wanted to come and share that with you now so that you guys would know that I've got a couple more weeks left. Today's June 10th. I think there's 2 weeks left in the fundraiser, and if you haven't seen The Chosen, go look up the Chosen app or the Angel Studios app, because you can watch it for free. This is one of the cool things about this, is that the fundraising is done to make the production so that it can be free to anybody who wants to watch it. And if you like what you see, then come back to my link and make a donation so you can help support The Chosen make another season. I'd like to see them keep on going after this series and maybe even do the Acts of the Apostles or do some other stories from the Bible, because it has been really something to see. Anyway, check out the link in the description, and I appreciate your time.
If we pay extra, could we maybe get some grease or fat?